Welcome, brave souls, to a realm where shadows whisper secrets too vile for the light. I'm here to unravel tales so chilling that your skin will crawl long after the silence falls. Help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers, hit that button now, and together, let's unearth the horrors awaiting us tonight. My family had just moved here a week ago, an old farm. But today, Mom was going away on a business trip for the weekend, leaving me in charge of the house. But I guess I was 18, so I could handle things, right? But Ben, he was only 14, and he was already terrified by the local stories about the cornfield next door. And he felt very uneasy without Mom. Our new house was right next to a vast, dense cornfield that stretched out as if it were trying to swallow up the horizon. It was pretty during the day, but at night, it was just a dark wall. We were having dinner, and Ben started telling us a scary story he heard at school. Some guy got lost in a corn maze around here and was never seen again. I tried to laugh it off, told him it was just a silly urban legend, but I could see the worry in his eyes. As we cleaned up, I glanced out the window. It was a very quiet cornfield, but I had the feeling that something was watching me. But there was something there, something that made me feel like we weren't as alone as we thought. I brushed it off, reminding myself that we were alone here, just me and Ben, in this new farmhouse. But as the night fell, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets the cornfield held, and if we were really ready to find out. Night fell, and the farmhouse fell into a silence that was almost too quiet. Ben had gone to bed, trying to sleep away his worries, but I was still awake, restless. The wind picked up outside, rustling the cornfields with a sound that was almost a whisper. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was my imagination running wild with Ben's stories. But then, I heard a rustle too loud, too deliberate to be the wind. I crept upstairs to my room, my heart pounding, and looked out the window. There, at the edge of the cornfield, I saw a figure. It was just a figure, but it was definitely a person, standing still and looking at the house. I blinked, and it was gone. Was it really there? I woke Ben, but when he got to the window, there was nothing to see. I told him it must be a trick of the light, that his stories were affecting me too. We went back to bed, but sleep did not come easily. That night, I dreamed that I was standing in the middle of a cornfield. The towering trees blocked out the sky, and I couldn't move. From somewhere deep in the cornfield, a voice whispered my name. The voice was soft, almost loving, but it scared me so much. I woke up in a cold sweat, the whisper still ringing in my ears. It seemed like the cornfield had more secrets than I had ever imagined, and they were starting to reach us. The next night, I was hunched over doing my schoolwork, while Ben heated up instant noodles. It was just another normal night, or so I thought. Suddenly, Ben's scream broke the silence. I dropped everything and ran to him. He pointed at the kitchen window, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. He told me that he saw a man right at the window staring at us. But it wasn't a normal man. His face was covered in blood, and his eyes, Ben said, were completely white, as if he couldn't really see anything, just staring into nothingness. I couldn't understand what was going on anymore. It was too scary. We didn't waste any time. I pulled the curtains back, my hands shaking, and we checked each door, making sure they were all locked. We wanted to be safe and to understand the truth. The face in the window, it was seared into my mind. Was it real, or just another trick of the light? But those white eyes, that bloody face, it seemed too real, too close. The cornfield outside seemed to whisper louder now, as if it were trying to tell us something, or warn us. Whatever it was, I knew we weren't alone in this house anymore. Late at night, around 3:15 a.m., the silence was broken by loud knocking that echoed throughout the house. They came from the back porch, not the front, which scared me again. Ben and I rushed back to our rooms, our hearts pounding in our chests, when we heard the scratching sounds begin to echo on the walls. It was as if something or someone was trying to break in. We huddled together, barely able to breathe, when suddenly, my phone lit up. It was an unfamiliar number. I stared at it, my hands shaking with hesitation, but curiosity and fear compelled me to answer. I picked it up, expecting to hear a voice, but there was nothing, just silence. Then I heard the distant whistling of wind and the rustling of corn, followed by a gasp. As if whoever was out there was right next to me, but so far away. The call ended as abruptly as it had begun, plunging us into darkness, the scratching growing louder. The cornfield outside seemed more menacing than ever, as if it were filled with secrets and dangers we couldn't even fathom. Whatever was going on, it was clear that we weren't just dealing with tricks of the light anymore. Something was out there, and it knew we were here. I was completely confused and scared after finding that man in the cornfield, so I called the police immediately. They came, but they couldn't identify the body. It was as if he didn't exist. That scared me even more, and I knew we had to find out what was going on. I started researching the land, digging into its history. That's when I stumbled upon something creepy. The land used to belong to a cult. They believed that the cornfield was a kind of purification gate. If members didn't obey, they would return to the earth. No bodies were found, which made me shiver. I couldn't sit still, so I headed straight to the city library. I turned the place upside down, searching through old records and newspapers. Finally, I found a tattered newspaper from 1960 that mentioned the cult, and there it was, a group photo of cult members. One of them, staring at the yellowed page, looked exactly like the man I'd found in the cornfield. My heart pounded as I realized the connection. This wasn't just a random event. It was tied to the dark history of this place, to the cornfield that seemed to hold so many secrets. We were living in haunted land, and now those secrets were reaching out to us, pulling us into a nightmare we couldn't escape. I was completely confused and scared after finding that man in the cornfield, so I called the police immediately. They came, but they couldn't identify the body. It was as if he didn't exist. That scared me even more, and I knew we had to find out what was going on. I started researching the land, digging into its history. That's when I stumbled upon something creepy. The land used to belong to a cult. They believed that the cornfield was a kind of purification gate. If members didn't obey, they would return to the earth. No bodies were found, which made me shiver. I couldn't sit still, so I headed straight to the city library. I turned the place upside down, searching through old records and newspapers. Finally, I found a tattered newspaper from 1960 that mentioned the cult, and there it was, a group photo of cult members. One of them, staring at the yellowed page, looked exactly like the man I'd found in the cornfield. My heart pounded as I realized the connection. This wasn't just a random event. It was tied to the dark history of this place, to the cornfield that seemed to hold so many secrets. We were living in haunted land, and now those secrets were reaching out to us, pulling us into a nightmare we couldn't escape. As darkness fell on our last night in the creepy farmhouse, I decided I wasn't going to sleep. I was too nervous, too afraid of what might happen next. Soon, the knocking started again, but this time it came from all over the house, as if someone or something was trying to surround us. Ben, who was just as scared as I was, suddenly found another drawing slid under the front door. I rushed over to see, and my heart sank. It was a drawing of a cornfield, but this time, it was engulfing the house, swallowing it whole. The message was clear. We were no longer safe here. After seeing those ominous figures in the cornfield, I knew we couldn't stay another night. We grabbed our emergency kit and ran to Mom's old Subaru, desperate to escape. I turned the key, but the car stalled once, twice, and wouldn't start. I pounded the steering wheel in frustration as Ben begged me to try again. Finally, miraculously, the engine roared to life. We sped down the winding gravel road, hoping to reach town and safety. But just a mile away, our headlights caught sight of something strange. A wall of hay bales, blocking the road completely. And atop those bales, 5 figures stood, too tall and too still to be normal. As we approached, their heads slowly turned toward us, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Panic surged through me, and I backed up. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, more figures were emerging from the cornfield behind us. We were trapped. The only way out was back to the farm. It was our only option. As we drove back to the farm, the house looked different, darker, more sinister. And when we got to the front door, it was open, even though I was sure I had locked it. We stepped inside, and a faint rhythmic drumming echoed from upstairs, like a heartbeat through the walls. It felt like something, or someone, was waiting for us, ready to welcome us. We were back where we started, but now, the nightmare had us, and there was nowhere to run. As I stand in the woods, the fragmented memories of my past flood back with terrifying clarity. I was abducted by the man who drove that same bronze Buick, held captive in this very cabin. My heart races as I recall the fear, the desperation. It was my husband, a state trooper, who saved me, and together we buried the truth, hoping to leave it behind. But now, with him gone, the past has come back to haunt us. That night, as darkness envelops the cabin, the Buick returns, its engine a menacing growl in the quiet night. My pulse quickens as a man steps out, too young to be the original captor who haunted my nightmares. A chilling realization dawns on me. It's the son of my former abductor, raised with a twisted purpose to finish what his father started. The air feels thick with dread as he approaches, his eyes filled with a cold determination. The memories and the present collide, and I know we're not just facing a random threat. We're up against a legacy of vengeance that refuses to be forgotten. Panic grips me as the young man advances toward the cabin, his intentions clear. Without hesitation, I grab Benji and Riley, and we flee into the woods, the killer hot on our heels. The moonlight guides our path as we weave through the dense trees, my instincts kicking into high gear. I know these woods well, thanks to the many times my husband brought me here. Using the terrain to our advantage, I lead my kids to a dried creek bed. With trembling hands, I set up a makeshift snare, hoping to catch our pursuer off guard. The plan works. As he charges after us, he triggers the trap and tumbles into the gully below. The final confrontation is swift and brutal. The man falls onto the old hunting stakes my husband had left behind, the sharp points piercing his body. As he lies there, gasping for breath, his eyes lock onto mine, and he utters his last words with a chilling certainty. He's still watching. The woods fall silent, save for the sound of our heavy breathing. We're safe for now, but the weight of his words lingers, a haunting reminder that this nightmare might not be over yet. As dawn breaks over the cabin, the police finally arrive. I breathe a sigh of relief, but the weight of the past few days sits heavy on my shoulders. I tell them enough to explain the immediate danger, but I keep the deeper secrets buried. Some truths are too painful, too dangerous to share. Before we leave, I take the tin box filled with haunting reminders of my past and bury it under a new tree, hoping to leave those memories behind. As we drive back home, the quiet of the car is broken by Benji's voice. He says, "The Whisper Man says thank you for coming back." A chill runs down my spine, and I can't shake the feeling that this nightmare isn't over. My eyes keep drifting to the rearview mirror, searching for any sign of the bronze Buick, but the road behind us is empty. Yet, as we pass the same memorial cross from the beginning of our journey, I notice something different. The lilies are gone, replaced by a fresh photo. My heart stops as I recognize it. It's a picture of me, Benji, and Riley, taken during our trip. But the person sitting in the driver's seat is not me. It's a stranger, their face obscured by shadows. The realization hits me hard. This road, this haunting legacy, might never truly let us go. It was a cold fall evening in Brooklyn, and I, Thomas Tommy Reeves, found myself drawn back to Greenwood Hollow Cemetery. It was well past 10 o'clock at night, but the pull was stronger than ever on this night, the eve of the anniversary of my daughter Ellie's death. The grief still clung to me like a second skin, and visiting her grave had become my way of feeling close to her. As I approached the cemetery gates, something strange happened. The old bell tower, silent for decades, suddenly chimed once. Its eerie sound struck me as odd, as if beckoning me closer. I paused, staring at the massive structure in the distance. Why now? Why tonight? The air was heavy with an unspoken promise, or perhaps a warning, but the ringing was too strong to ignore. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the gate open and stepped into Greenwood Hollow, not knowing that tonight would change everything. As I entered Greenwood Hollow Cemetery, the fog surrounded me like a shroud. It was eerie, the kind of silence that made you feel like you were the only person left in the world. I noticed one of the smaller side gates was slightly ajar, which was odd because I knew it was supposed to be locked at this hour. I told myself it was probably just a forgotten latch, but something about it made me feel wrong. I pushed the gate open and stepped inside, the crunch of dry leaves underfoot the only sound breaking the silence. As I walked deeper into the cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different tonight. The stone angels lining the path seemed to be watching me with unblinking eyes, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Then, suddenly, a crow landed on a nearby gravestone. It tilted its head, looked straight at me, and made a sound that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a regular call. It was a whisper, clear as day, that said, "Come back." I froze, my heart pounding. Had I really just heard that? The crow flew away, leaving me alone with the uneasy feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. But I couldn't go back now. I needed to see Ellie's grave, to feel close to her, even if something strange was happening. I came to Ellie's grave, the pale, cloudy moon casting a soft light over the gravestone. I knelt down, tracing her name with my fingers, and began to talk to her out loud, sharing bits and pieces of my day. It was a ritual that brought me comfort, a way to feel connected to her even after she was gone. But then, I heard a soft shuffling behind me. My heart skipped a beat as I slowly turned around. There, in the dim light, I saw 3 figures. They were covered in what looked like funeral shrouds, but they were gray and tattered, not the usual pristine white. Their faces were covered, adding to the mystery and horror of the scene. They seemed to be performing some kind of ritual, moving in a slow, wordless dance around each other. It was unsettling, almost hypnotic. I watched, frozen in place, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then one of the figures raised a hand and pointed directly at me. No words were spoken, just the silent gesture that sent a chill down my spine. Who were they? Why were they here? And why were they pointing at me? Questions swirled in my mind, but I couldn't move. Couldn't take my eyes off the lightless observers standing before me. Fear gripped me as I backed away from the lightless trackers. They began to move, slowly following me through the narrow, dense paths between the ancient tombs. My heart raced, and I ducked behind a large headstone, trying to stay hidden. As I crouched there, catching my breath, my hand touched something cold and mossy. I looked down and saw a sunken grave, partially hidden by the thick moss. But what caught my attention and made me flinch was the name carved into the headstone. Ellie Reeves. It was her name, but it couldn't be her grave. I knew she wasn't buried here. I leaned closer, brushing away the moss to read the date of death. It was 3 years off. This couldn't be right. Confusion and horror surged through my mind. How could this be? Had I forgotten the exact date? Or was there something else going on here? The figures were still moving toward me, their slow, cautious footsteps echoing in the night. I needed to get out of here, but seeing Ellie's name on this grave had me shaken. I began to suspect that something was terribly wrong with my memory. What was happening to me? The next day, I found myself at the local library, rifling through the historical archives. I needed answers, and I hoped Mrs. Calder, the local historian who had researched Greenwood Hollow's past, could help. She had always been a source of knowledge about the area. As I sat across from her, she began to decipher the history of the cemetery. She told me that Greenwood Hollow had once been the site of an experimental sanitarium. It was chilling to hear that some patients were buried in secret plots under false names. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Mrs. Calder then explained that the bell tower was used as a signal to alert the townspeople when a patient escaped. Things were starting to get strange, the bells ringing last night, the eerie atmosphere. But there was more to it than that. She handed me a tattered old ledger, and my heart sank when I saw the name Eleanora Reeves listed as a patient buried there. The spelling was different, but it was too similar to Ellie's name to be a coincidence. My hands shook as I read the entry. What did it mean? Was Ellie connected to this place in a way I hadn't known? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they created was more disturbing than I'd ever imagined. Determined to discover the truth, I returned to Greenwood Hollow Cemetery late in the evening. The air was filled with anticipation as I approached Ellie's grave. As I approached, the figures appeared again, just as they had last night, but only when I was near her resting place. This time, I heard them whisper, their voices soft but clear, repeating the same haunting phrase. "She's not yours to lose." The words echoed in my mind, stirring a storm of emotions. What did they mean? How could Ellie not be mine to lose? As I knelt by her grave, the ground beneath me shook slightly, as if in response to the whispers. It was a strange, uncomfortable sensation, and I felt a chill run down my spine. But then, something even stranger happened. A hand rose from the ground right next to me, its fingers clawing at the air before disappearing back into the ground as quickly as it had appeared. My heart pounded in my chest. What was going on here? The connection between the figures, the whispers, and now this hand from the ground, it was all too much to process, but I knew I couldn't go back. I needed to find out what really happened to Ellie, no matter how terrifying the truth might be. I panicked as I ran from Ellie's grave, whispers and glimpses of figures chasing me in the darkness. I ran toward the main exit of the cemetery, desperate to escape this nightmare. But when I reached the gate, my heart sank. Instead, there was a solid brick wall with no breaks in it, no way out. I ran along the wall, frantically searching for an opening, but there was nothing. The whispers grew louder, and the figures seemed to be getting closer. I gasped, panting as I ran toward the bell tower, the only other landmark I could think of. When I reached the bell tower, I spotted something glinting in the moonlight. A key embedded in one of the graves. I grabbed it, hoping it would help me escape this madness. But before I could decide what to do with it, the bell rang again, the sound echoing through the night. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Everything froze, the whispers, the figures, even my racing heart. And then, just as suddenly, the figures disappeared, leaving me alone in the eerie silence. I clutched the key, wondering what it meant and what I should do next. But one thing was clear. I was stuck here until I found out the truth about Ellie and this haunted place. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally found a crack in the solid brick wall and stumbled out onto the cemetery path. The night air was thick with fog, and my heart pounded as I breathed. And there, parked at the curb, was the same old truck I'd seen years ago. This time, I didn't hesitate. I approached the truck, my steps cautious but determined. The driver, his face as looming as a graveyard ghost, rolled down his window and handed me an envelope without a word. Then the truck drove away, disappearing into the fog as quickly as it had appeared. I ripped open the envelope, my hands shaking. Inside were photos of Ellie, photos that shouldn't have existed. They showed her at various ages, smiling, living a life I'd never known. One photo in particular caught my attention. Ellie is a young woman, standing in front of the bell tower, smiling brightly. The date on the photo was 2 years after she was presumed dead. My mind was reeling. How could this have happened? These photos challenged everything I thought I knew about her death. The reality I clung to was crumbling, and I was left with more questions than answers. What happened to Ellie? And why am I only seeing these things now? The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photos of Ellie spread out before me. They were a stark reminder of everything I thought I knew about her death. But it was the note that came with it that really shocked me. Your memories were made for you. She lives where the death knell is. Come back when you're ready to trade the truth for peace. The words echoed in my mind, and I realized something cold. Perhaps I had unwittingly participated in a cover-up, or something far more supernatural. The thought that my memories had been manipulated, that Ellie might still be alive, was almost too much to bear. What kind of truth was being handed to me? And what peace would I give for it? As I sat there, lost in thought, the faint sound of the bell echoed through my apartment. It couldn't be. Greenwood Hollow Cemetery was miles away, but I could hear it as clearly as if I were standing at the base of the tower. I needed to go back. I needed to find out what really happened to Ellie, and face whatever truth awaited me in Greenwood Hollow. Haunted by the photos and the final message, I returned to Greenwood Hollow Cemetery on a stormy night. The sky above was angry, lightning flashing on the bell tower as I passed through the main gate, now mysteriously open. The cemetery felt different this time, unfamiliar paths and tombstones carved in languages I didn't recognize. There was a pulsing energy here, as if the place itself were alive. As I approached Ellie's grave, masked figures waited. Their faces were still covered, but they beckoned me closer. This time, I didn't run. I needed to know the truth. I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging around us. Is Ellie alive? Is she really gone? The tallest stepped forward, placing his hand over his heart. Suddenly, a memory flooded my mind, clearer than any I'd had in years. I'd seen a white room, doctors arguing, and Ellie older, scared being pulled away from me. Now it all came flooding back to me. Ellie had been part of a secret government memory experiment after a tragic accident. The bell rang again, a shrill sound that sent shivers down my spine. The ground beneath Ellie's grave cracked open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. My heart raced as the leader pulled back the veil. It was Ellie, my Ellie, standing right in front of me. She said nothing. Instead, she held out her hand, giving me a choice. Join her in the truth, or stay up high and live in the peace of oblivion. The decision was clear. I took her hand, and the ground closed behind us. The bell rang one last time, and then all was silent forever.